are good to go. All right. Good morning, people. Welcome to the House of Pain. Today we are broadcasting from a comfy couch in Thomas's house. And we don't have an offsider today. Thomas is over there doing his thing. And so today is going to be quite literally focused on me. I wish I could have a camera I could cross to Thomas, but I'm going to give away all our secrets of what people wear when they're not on the camera. So good to have you along. Who's first in? Sophie or Thomas was? Oh, me and Thomas were first in, but Sophie, good to have you along. Georgie Bankston, good to have you along. Thank you for your emoji of affection. And Jeremy Saul, good to have you. And we've got all these big travelling guests from Gingin and Melbourne and that's still hanging around, so this is cool. And Sophie, obviously probably still from Harvey Bay, so good to have at least one local in here. Good to have you guys along. Today we are discussing two epic questions. If God is everywhere, is he in hell? And also, let me read it properly, could Jesus have ever really wanted to sin? So good questions. So hopefully the people who ask those questions tune in today. Amy, welcome to her. Good to have you along, Amy Brown. And Gracie, good to have you along. Good to have you. Sophie thinks she broke her toe. How, Sophie? How did you think you broke your toe? You're really in the wars as a person, and I appreciate that. It makes me feel very coordinated. So, James is here. Is James actually here? James is here probably on the same Wi-Fi network as us, but he hasn't visited me in person. He's just here online. Good morning, James. Good to see you, man.
We've also got a good morning to Esther, Joshua, and Matthew, who are all here.
Esther, Josh, Painter, and Matt, the faithful YouTube crew. Good to have you guys along. Good to have you guys along. And Wire, so I'm going to guess that's Lockie. Lockie Wire. I imagine he's in the building, so good to have you here, mate. I hope this morning is beneficial to everybody and slightly enjoyable. So my first question for you guys, as we start discussing sin and hell, really positive, wonderful topics for this morning, is what is something that you think should be a sin? It's probably not a sin. But what's something that you think is a sin in your life, or something that people do around you that you think should be like in the Bible as a thou shalt not, but it's not really, it's just something you just despise or can't get along with. This thought actually came to me because as I was greeted in this wonderful, loving house of people that I thoroughly appreciate, the person who greeted me, and I'm now looking at opposite, is wearing like odd socks, okay? And odd socks is pretty close to being a sin in my books. It's all right if they're like the same brand and maybe the same color on the top, but like underneath, maybe that's a different color. I can live with that. We do have this, they're the same style sock. They're both quarter crew. They're both Bonds, but one is all white with a bit of Bonds on the bottom. The other one is my steady type of sock, which is black with Bonds on the bottom. So I'm wearing, let's give you a bit of sock vision today. This is my sock, and believe it or not, yes, same socks. So I think that odd socks is basically a sin. My other one that I came to mind straight away is, you know when you use the microwave and someone like uses the microwave, stops it at 3 seconds, takes their food out and then leaves it. And then the number 3 is left, or even worse, the number 1 second is left in the microwave and they don't clear it. Doesn't go back to clock, doesn't go back to 0. They leave the microwave on. What do you guys think should be a sin that isn't actually a sin? Carmen, how big was the stick? Sorry, not Carmen, Gracie. How big was the stick? Oh, the stick that whacked Sophie. Great stuff. Siobhan, welcome. Lucy, welcome. Dan, welcome. Good to have you guys along. And Sophie, I apologise to hear that your toe was whacked by quite a large stick. Yeah, so feel free to let us know what should be a sin but probably isn't. Feel that coming through, whatever. So odd socks, not clearing the microwave, Sauce in the pantry. We've discussed that one at an earlier date. Thomas, you got anything in your life that you think should be a sin
Oh,
that is not?
Esther here's got some ideas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Esther reckons that messing up the trolleys in the trolley bay at the supermarket.
All right. So
Not a big fan of that.
yeah. So the people who there's a trolley bay. It's clearly got all the little trolleys in it, and then someone puts with the big whopper one that you put 2 kids in. They push that into that same row. That's what she's talking about?
I think so.
All right. Yeah.
And
So
then, no one can push big trolleys in.
I fully agree. Should be. Yeah. That's basically a sin. There's 4 bays of trolleys. There's 4 types of trolleys. Line them up, people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, and Caleb. Caleb is here. Good to have Caleb. Quick question, Thomas. Mine is buffering a fair bit on my phone. Should I get off your Wi-Fi? Should I go onto my? I think I'm on your Wi-Fi by accident. Let me get off that.
It's looking good on mine.
Cool.
Instagram, how's it looking?
Yeah. So odd socks is not a sin. Sorry, just to clarify this. Okay, odd socks is not a sin. I just think it should be. Right? I think the world is better without it. I think when we get to heaven, if we wear socks, everyone will wear even socks.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't know. Maybe you think scrunching or folding. There should only be one way that you do that, and the other way is just not right. It's just not right, people. So, Gracie, Gracie's in your boat. Gracie reckons that if odd socks was a sin, she'd be in a lot of trouble. The good thing is that even if this was a sin, Jesus forgives us from all our sins. So it doesn't matter whether your sin is, one that we call a really bad sin, or it's as little as wearing odd socks, which is not a sin. But I just have a personal grievance with it. Georgie says, I think eating marshmallows should be a sin. Banish those things. Well, I guess we'll talk about hell more later today, but maybe marshmallows will be in hell. Because, they talk about fire in hell, so maybe that's where marshmallows belong, is in the fires of hell. But yeah, we will be discussing this more later. So yeah, feel free to keep sending those in. Things that you think should be a sin, but are not. Sleeping in beyond 10 o'clock. If you're still asleep, and if you're not a shift worker, if you've gone to bed at a reasonable time and you're still able to sleep until 10 a.m., is that all right, or is that just wrong? Easy. Raw dog in pages. Cool.
We look at YouTube here.
Yep.
They're
Fill us in.
still pretty keen on the trolleys.
All right.
Yeah.
Trolleys are a big thing on YouTube at the moment.
Yeah. Joshua has expanded on Esther's insight and also reckons that people leaving them in parking spots, leaving trolleys in parking spots isn't particularly popular. And
That is also evil.
Matthew has an interesting idea, separate from trolleys, where he reckons that everything is a sin if we don't do it for God.
All right. So if you wear odd socks for God, it's okay. But if you, it's a good thought. So Matt's there said that everything we don't do for God is a sin. That's a pretty well written statement. So dog-earing pages should be a sin from HBY. Is that you, Lockie? So you should always use a bookmark. All right, you should never ever dog-ear a page. What if you own the book? Are you allowed to dog-ear if it's your book? Certainly if it's not your book. I feel like if you dog-eared a library book, that's a bit not right. But cool. But dog-earing pages, that gets Lockie, and Lockie's quite a reader, so I appreciate that one. Not stacking the dishwasher in its proper sections. Yes. Look, the dishwasher has come up numerous times in youth church this term already, and seems like it's quite a controversial topic. So, yes, is stacking the dishwasher inappropriately sin? Not reading should be a sin. All right. That means that'd be cool. Like, if not reading was a sin, does that mean that'd be cool? Like if you got saved and then all of a sudden you became fully literate. Like Jesus came into my life and now I'm just fully literate. Wonder if we could just remove that sin from our life as soon as we became a Christian. So a couple of insights there from book lovers. from Gracie and Locke and stuff. That's cool. Keep them coming in. Things that you think should be a sin, even though they're not. And they never will be. But it's just kind of fun to judge what other people do in that sort of way. It'd be nice to be divine and be able to dictate what is right and what is wrong and those sort of things. Dating your cousin in Gin Gin. I'm pretty certain that is a sin. I'm pretty certain. Don't know if that's. Yeah. That's the closest we've got to. Yeah, no, that's. Anyway, we'll move on. Going to school should be a sin. Schoolwork should be a sin. Wow. A few weeks ago, I felt like all you teenagers were like, can't wait to get back to school. You've been back for what, 1 week, and now all of a sudden school is a sin again. Crazy. And then we're going to have these mad. See, this is why this is a fun topic, because we have these contrasts that Gracie says not reading should be a sin. We generally learn to read at school. So if we went to school and it was a sin, but it was where we learnt to read, so then that wouldn't be a sin. Like, see the theological debates we align ourselves with as soon as we get this. Paul is just jealous of Gin Gin's freedom. Yes. The liberties and liberalism of Gin Gin. Lucy says that I'd say wearing Speedos, but that is actually a sin. Look, it might be a sight for sore eyes, but wearing stripes with spots, so good, so good. Dan in Speedos. Look, that causes some people to sin. I'm not going to lie. Me in Speedos, strutting my way to the water, I have no doubt that I'm quite aware, and I'm aware of this, that it may cause other people to sin. So, look, it's probably something I should address at times, and I do apologise to those people that I've made stumble. Cool. Jeremy Saul says blind fillet of fish from Macca's. Oh man, that takes me back to the Beach Bash. Great connections over the fillet of fish at Beach Bash.
International roast was.
International roast?
That was pretty good.
At Beach Bash, yeah. Drinking international roast should be a sin. Cool. I really appreciate you guys. Let me into your life in regards to what you think should be a sin. Keep them coming. I'm going to start chatting about some other stuff, but feel free to keep them coming, and we'll go. We'll keep moving on. But so today we are going to discuss is, could Jesus have ever really wanted to sin? Could Jesus have ever really wanted to sin? Great question. I don't know if I can't remember who asked this one, but if you are here today, I hope we do it justice. If not, feel free to send in questions as we address this question as to what's going on. So this question often also fans off into other questions, so I might try and touch on that a little bit. But could Jesus have ever really wanted to sin? Now, before we sort of delve into that question, I think a really important point to cover is the fact that Jesus' life, so Jesus' living on earth and the temptations that he faced were very, very real. They were real. There's nothing fake about them. They were real. But Jesus never sinned. He lived through this life. He faced temptation. Hebrews talks about how he basically faced everything that we face in our lives, obviously in his context, and yet was without sin. And sin in our lives is usually caused by one of three things. There you go, 3 from last week, the number 3. 3 things. Satan. Right? Satan causes us to sin. He's always at work through his demons, trying to get people to fall, trying to get people to not follow God. The thing the Bible calls the world. Okay, basically that our world is in a state of sin, and so the influences around us cause us to sin. They're the outward effects of sin on our lives. So anything around us, that is the sort of an outward effect that isn't directly Satan. And Satan, these all work together. So Satan works through the world. And there's also our sinful nature. The third thing is our sinful nature. Now, it's important to realise that when it comes to discussing this question, could Jesus have ever really wanted to sin? He wrestled with Satan more intimately and more personally than any of us do. He had a great trial facing Satan at different times in those temptations and in the life that he lived, in the spiritual battles he faced. He very much had the effects of the world around him. In every sort of basically pressure and sinfulness that is around us, Jesus had in his context. And so he endured all of those throughout his whole life. But what is different between us and Jesus is that Jesus didn't have a sinful nature. Okay, so he had Satan, attacking him like pretty heavily compared to even, I guess, what we see personally in our lives. He had the world around him influencing him and wanting to influence him. But the thing that Jesus had that was different to us is that he didn't have a sinful nature. He was conceived by the Holy Spirit. He didn't actually have a physical human father. He didn't have a sinful nature. So he had the things outside affecting him, but he didn't have the sinful nature inside that makes him sin. And sometimes with us, we don't need the effects of Satan, or we don't need the effects of the world. We don't need external effects on us to be able to sin, because inside us, we are born, because of Adam and Eve and because of humanity, we are born with a sinful nature that makes us, in and of ourselves, capable of and also want to sin. And we don't need to be taught how to sin or how to do what's wrong. We want to do it. I'll get to some stuff here soon. And Jesus didn't have that. Jesus did not have a sinful nature inside him. If he did, we have some serious issues in the fact that he wouldn't be able to take away our sin. He would not be able to be the perfect sacrifice for us. So he didn't have that part. So that's one of the things that, as I've read this week and done a lot of work around this in the last couple of weeks, that I've really enjoyed learning about Jesus. And what I love about the two questions we're going to address today is how much they've helped me learn and understand stuff about Jesus. So quick break. Lucy asked, do I apologise to the people I scared for life with my Speedos? No, maybe I should get a pair of Speedos that just say sorry on the back. And then I could do two activities at once. Gracie tells us that she took the photo of her mum's Insta thing. That's awesome. Gracie, did your mum be like, oi, I want a really awesome Instagram photo. Can you come and take me? Was it staged? Or did your mum want that photo for Instagram and did she set it up? I'd love to know the backstory to that, Gracie, about your photo or your mum's photo on her Instagram. Caleb says, was a temptation when he was about to be thrown off the cliff in Nazareth? I think there would have been temptation to do certain things when Jesus was doing that, but that was certainly the world affecting him. They wanted to throw him off a cliff, and Jesus there showed his divine power and actually walked through the crowd, so they couldn't throw him off the cliff. Sophie's brought up the lolly pizza on Friday night, which I refused to take my mind mentally back to. And actually, my bin at home actually smells like that lolly pizza. And Gracie's confirming that it was all set up. That's so good. I can't wait till I see your mum next, Gracie, so I can ask her about how she set up her Instagram photo. That's fantastic. Cool. And Jeremy says my Speedo should say, you're welcome. And who's the dude of Moana? I could have him singing that "You're Welcome" song on it. The Rock, the guy, The Rock, or whatever. Back to our topic about could Jesus have ever really wanted to sin? And Philippians chapter 2, verse 6. Philippians chapter 2, verse 6 is the start of a little song sort of thing that tells us a lot about Jesus' character. And it starts off, Jesus Christ, in very nature God. Okay? And this question is such a big question because it wrestles with Jesus' true nature, that Jesus was both fully human and fully God. And how our little human brains wrestle with those two things is often quite hard. Okay? Sophie talked about how she thought she was smart, and she's maybe not smart. And often when I wrestle with things of God, I think I'm smart until I start delving into it. Or maybe I think I understand God, and then I start wrestling with it and reading what the Bible actually says, and you're like, oh man, there's so much more to this, and it's such an awesome thing to wrestle with. And it's been good for me to prepare like this with this. So Jesus didn't have a sinful nature. He had the nature of God, and one of the attributes of God that he kept was the fact that he did not have a sinful nature. If he did have a sinful nature, then he would not have been able to be the perfect sacrifice for us. I think a bigger question is, so therefore I think the answer is no. Could Jesus have ever really wanted to sin? The answer is, I believe to that is no. He didn't ever want to sin. I mean, there's a lot of times in my life where I don't want to sin, and I do. And so the desire is to not sin, but I still end up sinning. And so often the bigger question with this is did Jesus have the capacity to sin? So did he, like, even if he didn't want to, could he have done it and stuff? But that's a big debate, and I believe the answer to that is also no. But for me, what a really helpful insight to understand this, it comes out of Matthew 26. So if you know the story of Matthew, the story of Jesus in Matthew goes where Jesus ends up, just before he's about to be crucified, he ends up in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's praying. He's talking to God the Father about what's about to happen. And Jesus prays these two things. Firstly, he says, "Let this cup pass from me." And the cup is often a thing that in the Bible is often referred to for God's wrath, God's anger being poured out. That's what was about to happen. Jesus was about to take the place of all sin on the cross, and he was going to bear God's wrath, God's anger, God's just righteousness. And he's going to say, he prays to God, honestly, real. He says, I don't want to have to go to the cross. If there's another way, I would like to do that. That's a better way. I don't want to do this. And that's not sin. Being honest with God about what we want and don't want is not sin. It's encouraged by God. Read the Psalms. It's awesome for stuff like that. And this here is awesome, that Jesus is sinless, and he's yet saying to God, I know this is the way that looks like things are heading, but I don't want that to be the way. And what makes this sinless is the fact that Jesus is honest with God there, as he prays to God the Father, but then he says after that, I'd love for this not to be the way it is, but not what I want, not as I will, but what you want, what you will. Not what I will, but what you will. And so he prays to God and he says, God, I don't really want this, but more than that, I want what you want. So if this is the way it's got to go, God, if this is the way it has to happen, if this is your plan, then that's what I want. And to me, that's a great insight to the fact that Jesus never ever wanted to sin. In this situation, there was something that he didn't want, that he would have rather not do. But more than that, he wanted to do what God's will was. And in that he remains sinless. He's honest with God, he's real with God, he's wrestling with God about this stuff, but ultimately he wants to do what God wants him to do. And so in that he remains sinless. And I think that is the greatest insight that I can find in my reading and my understanding, that Jesus never wanted to sin. So Sophie asked, has everyone at least sinned once? Yeah, so sin is, I guess, a sort of a religious term, but sin is basically doing anything that God doesn't approve of, God doesn't want us to do. It's doing something that is against God's will, going against the way God would have something done. And yes, I would agree with Gracie there. We all sin at least once a day. At least once a day. In our mind, so not even always acting out. Sometimes we just think really selfishly. And God's ideal and perfect standard is that we wouldn't be selfish people. We wouldn't be proud people. We wouldn't say things or do things towards other people that are hurtful. And sort of these things. And I know in my life, these things happen far more frequently than I would want them to happen. Sensei Payne has jumped in. Good to have you along. Got a couple of people inside this house also on this. This is cool. Great question, Gracie. Wasn't he kind of praying to himself? Jesus was praying to God the Father. And Jesus is God, and he had the nature of God. But in those moments, he's talking to God the Father. And this is where the Trinity, which we talked a little bit about last week, again in the numbers thing, gets a bit whacked out. And we, in our little mortal brains, struggle to understand this fully. And that's cool, because God is bigger than us. But Jesus was praying to God the Father. It's cool is that we as Christians, we can pray directly to God the Father and through God the Son by the Holy Spirit. And we can pray to the Holy Spirit, and we can pray to Jesus, and we can pray to God the Father. And we have that relationship with all three parts of the Godhead, that we can sort of pray to all of them. Whereas Jesus obviously didn't pray to himself. He prayed to God the Father. But it's pretty deep. And I guess why this is important is that Hebrews chapter 2 talks about how Jesus is our merciful and faithful high priest. He's our merciful and faithful high priest. And so he's able to sympathise with us because he suffered and was tempted just as we were. And so when we do pray to Jesus, when we do pray to him, say, Jesus, like I'm struggling here, I need some help. We're not praying to some God who's up there who's like, oh, I wonder what that would be like to be in that situation. Okay? Jesus has endured it. Jesus has been through it, and he did it without sin. And he has had the effects of the world, and he has had the effects of Satan on his life, and he's gone through it. And so he does sympathise with us. In fact, he sympathised with us so much to the point where he actually had sin put upon him. He took our place for what we've done and he hadn't done on the cross. And he was separated from God in those moments, and he took the punishment that we deserved, even though he didn't deserve it. So I hope that helps a little bit. Caleb says he thinks he gets it. I think I get it too, Caleb. There's a lot to wrestling with this, particularly in regards to how could Jesus sympathise with us if he couldn't sin, and did he ever, it's a great question, and that's why it's a question you guys have asked. So I hope that's helped a little bit. And Jesus has dealt with all our sins. Even I wonder whether Jesus had to wrestle with wearing odd sandals or not. I don't think he had the microwave issue. But that's it. So that's that question done. Let us know if we get any questions. Do you have any interaction from the YouTube crew, Mr. Thomas, that needs to be broadcasted?
Yeah. Oh, someone had a question. They said when Jesus took the fish and the... Oh, it's a bit silly. No.
We don't let you know. We would never do silly. Is that Matt Tanius?
Oh, no, we've had a few new people join that we haven't had before.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Welcome, YouTubers. Good to have you guys along. All right, while we're getting a little bit more from there, my next question for you guys, as we delve into our next question, is what comes to your mind when you think of hell? Okay, whether it be from cartoons, from the Bible, from just your own concepts. When you think of hell, what comes to mind? Hell is a pretty fascinating topic. I feel like at any point in our lives, or the mystery and the unknowns of hell and demons and Satan and stuff, and the dark side of the force, or certainly the enemies of God, they interest us, or they intrigue us, or we wonder about what to go with that sort of stuff. And that's where this question I think comes from a little bit, because the next question we're going to wrestle with is if God is everywhere, is he in hell? If God is everywhere, is he in hell? The if God is everywhere addresses the fact that God is omnipresent. God is everywhere. One of the things that the Bible communicates with us, and we believe about God, the God of the Bible, is that he's everywhere. He's ever present. It doesn't matter whether you're at the Payne's house, you guys' house, whether we're doing youth group or youth church in person or apart, God is with all of us. He's everywhere. There's no part of this earth or this universe where God is not sovereign and in control and there, fully there in his presence. So, what comes to mind when you think of hell? Marilyn Manson, but in a good way. Is that about hell? Caleb, that's but in a good way. I like that insight there, Lucy. Caleb, flaming pits and large rock prisons. Cool. That's what comes to your mind when it comes to hell. Sophie asks a question: would you agree that if everyone will at least go down a different path that God doesn't want them to? Would you agree that everyone will at least go down a different path that God doesn't want them to? I'd say that's almost a good metaphor for sin. That when we walk down different paths, God often goes, why are you walking down that path? Why are you saying that about that other person? Why are you doing this? And I know I've walked down lots of paths that God would have preferred me not to walk down. Out of love for me, that he would have been like, hey, why are you doing this? Like, this is just a dumb path to walk down. Gracie thinks of a real dark, empty and quiet, and all the people's spirits that didn't go to heaven are just wandering around, not knowing what's going on. Cool. That's what comes to your mind when you think of hell, Gracie. Cool. Thank you for sharing that insight. Lucy Anderson says that Marilyn Manson is a legend. So let us know what you think of hell. What comes to your mind? No right or wrong. I'm not. One of the things that we often think is, well, what's people going to think or whatever. But just let us know what comes to your mind when you think of hell. Good thoughts so far. I was watching a little bit of a little music doco, flicking through some channels earlier this week, and they was interviewing Freddie Mercury, the old lead singer of the Queen band, of the band Queen. Good speeching. Famous, very famous rock star, and they asked him, do you think he's going to go to heaven or hell? And he said, I think I'm going to hell for sure, but I'd rather go there. And we'll discuss that a little bit today in regards to when we discuss God and hell, and is God in hell? What does that mean? And then where would you rather be? And hell's often something that we don't talk about too much in our culture and in our lives now. We sort of sometimes like to talk about all the things that Jesus does for us as Christians and the things he saves us from, but maybe we don't always discuss hell itself and what that does mean. Or, we talk about heaven a fair bit because it's a positive thing. Hell has obviously got negative connotations to it, and so sometimes we avoid those conversations. So, Sophie says she thinks it's a really dark place with Satan and everyone who didn't get to heaven. Yeah, right. There you go. There's some insight from Sophie. Good insight. Have we had anything from the YouTube gang, Thomas?
Yes. So we've had Matt Tanius say, he said he thinks of burning sulfur, can never get used to the heat, complete isolation and separation.
Yep,
and
isolation,
Esther says,
separation,
never
heat.
ending pain, fire, everything bad on earth, times 10,000.
Esther, times all the bad things on earth times 10,000. So times 10,000, that's also very biblical numbers there, which we didn't do 10,000 last week. We couldn't do every single number in the Bible. 10,000 is quite a number of exaggeration in the Bible, sort of expressing just lots and lots and lots. So I don't know if you meant to do that, Esther, but good follow-up from your question last week on numbers. So Gracie has her insights from the books Percy Jackson. Yeah, there's heaps of books and movies and stuff that explore with the concept of hell. Often it gets our mind thinking, or it gets our brain ticking as to what's going on there. So today the question is, if God is everywhere, which is what we believe as Christians, is he in hell? Great question. Great question. I've thoroughly enjoyed how this question has forced me to do some research and stuff. I showed this book to you guys about 3 weeks ago, and this book has been a great book help for me. It's called Concise Theology, and this has a chapter on hell, and it has helped me a lot to go back and read it again. I'm going to read you some little words out of this book on the hell at the end of this. But when it comes to our minds for hell, in the Bible it talks about lots of different things. So it talks about it as a place of judgment and fire in Revelation 20. It talks about it as a place for utter darkness forever in Jude 13. In Matthew, it talks about being a gnashing of teeth in darkness. It talks about fire. It talks about fire and gnashing of teeth. It talks about weeping. It talks about outer darkness and gnashing of teeth. There's 5 different references there. In Luke 16:23, it talks about hell being a place of torment. In 2 Thessalonians, it talks about being a place of punishment, destruction, and vengeance. In 2 Peter 3:7, again, judgment and destruction. And so they're just some of the pictures that we get in the Bible about what this place hell is going to be. And how literal or metaphorical that is, like, I guess I don't know, and people discuss. Obviously, one thing that isn't going to be as we understand it from these descriptions is that it's talked about to be a place of utter darkness, and it's also talked to be a place of like a lake of fire, or there's a place of burning and fire. And as we understand it, in most common senses, fire and darkness don't coexist. So I kind of like with heaven and stuff, I don't understand exactly how this is. But we know that if we certainly focus on these pictures of a place of burning, a place of darkness, they are places with great and significantly negative and terrible connotations. That's just some of the descriptions that when I went back to the Bible, I thought, okay, what does the Bible actually say about hell? And the verse that probably makes this question such a good question and relevant is that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 7 to 9, it talks about hell being a place away from the presence of the Lord. Place away from the presence of the Lord. And as we read the Bible, we often get this idea, and we discuss it, that hell is a place where we are separated from God. We're cut off from God. And we get that from a parable that Jesus tells, and we get it from other places as well. But that hell is a place where we're cut off from the presence of God. And to a point, that's true. We are. We are cut off from the presence of God in the fact that there is no positive relationship with God in hell. Hell is a place where there is nothing good about God, or none of the goodness or grace of God will be present in hell. None of that. But my answer to this is that God is present in hell. That God himself has no relationship there, and that nothing of his goodness is there. But God is sovereign over hell. God made hell. God created hell. God is sovereign over it. He's the one who's actually in control of hell and what happens there. It's not Satan's little pit where Satan is in control. Hell is actually a place, and Revelation talks about in the final judgment that Satan is going to be locked up there. Specifically, Satan is going to be locked up there forever, chained, bound, to have no more power, to be able to not do anything ever again. That's where he's going to be contained forever. So God is present there in that he is not absent. It's not a place where God just leaves it to be what it will be. Now, God is still in control of it. And God is present there by his wrath and his displeasure. So God's love is not in hell. God's grace is not in hell. God's goodness is not in hell. But hell is a place where God's wrath and God's displeasure and God's justice and God's sovereignty are still very much in play. And so it's a place where people will experience God without any of his goodness and grace. All those things that were offered to us now and are experienced in full in heaven will not be there. And what makes that incredible is that these are two quotes from that book that I showed you before, is that the reality will exceed the symbol of dreadfulness. That we get all these pictures of what hell is like, and none of them are good. Like, none of them in the Bible are good. We have some pictures of hell in our society where hell isn't that sort of a bad place. Because maybe it seems like this place where God isn't, and so we just sort of rule ourselves and we have this freedom or whatever. But that's not the case as we read it in the Bible. And the reality is that it exceeds whatever we picture. The reality of it's going to be more dreadful than that. And the same with heaven. Whatever we can picture about how good heaven is, it's going to be better than that. Because even the best things we know in life now have traces of sin through them, and there's elements of badness here. And heaven and hell have all that taken away. So heaven is a place where there is nothing bad. And hell is a place where there is nothing good. And again, in that verse, in that book I read, there's a quote where it says, "No one can imagine how bad hell will be." And because God is going to be present there in his wrath and his displeasure and his justice and his sovereignty, but he won't be present in any of his goodness or grace. He will reserve those entirely for those who choose him, who understand that Jesus is the only way to be forgiven of our sins, and those people in heaven will enjoy his entire goodness and grace and love, and hell will be the exact opposite of that. Are there safety pins in hell? Is that what you mean, Lucy? Are there safety pins in hell? You've got me interested. Any questions on that? Any questions on hell and God's presence there and what that means? Did this, I'd love for you guys to either write it in or message us. Is that the answer you were expecting, or does that answer involve some wrestling? Because to be honest, if you'd asked me this before I did some research, if you'd said, is God present in hell? My answer probably would have been like, no, hell is separation from God. And it is, in some ways, that it's separation from all the good aspects of God. But in my understanding, I would say that God's sovereignty and his justice and his wrath are present in hell. That is what hell was created for. Chappie says, I imagine hell being endless Taylor Swift songs. I've heard other people mention that she's probably not quite as country music as she used to be, but hell is just the place where country music is played on a repeat. So, huh? Gympie is pretty close. For numerous reasons. But there is a Beefies in Gympie, so you probably have to get rid of the Beefies out of out of Gympie before you got an even better taste of it. But does that mean hell also has a lot of real estate signs? Because that is, I reckon, Gympie's niche advertising market is real estate. Hell is a place where people just walk around with odd socks all the time. And even if you try to put on even socks, it just doesn't work. They just turn to odd socks and you have to endure all day with it. Endless Hillsong music too far. I did think about, as we explored the sin question, I thought, and so we're going there now, so why not let's just do it. We've got about 10 more minutes. Feel free to send in what would be an attribute maybe if you were to discover, or if you were to, this is the thought of something that you would think would be in hell, that maybe other people wouldn't, i.e. Taylor Swift. Endless Justin Bieber. Oh man, can you imagine baby, like just for eternity? Be a rough gig. Jeremy's question, why would God make a system just to save us from it? That's a really good question, Jeremy. Why would God make a system just to save us from it? I'd have to think about that more and to give you a better answer, Jeremy. We'll delve into that. I won't dapple with that yet. There's nothing wrong with odd socks. I would die halfway through the song. Yeah, it's the problem with hell. Once we get to hell, we've already died. Like death is beyond us, so we don't have that option to get out. Is there anything coming through on YouTube, Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, we've got some interesting chat. Matty's got some good stuff. He reckons, first he reckons endless assignments.
Endless assignments.
Would be an attribute of hell. But he also has talked about how he believes God's judgment is in hell and God is present in hell.
So God's judgment is present in hell.
Yeah.
So that's an attribute of God that is present there. Yep, I would agree with you, Matt. There. Sometimes when it's to Christmas time, but you're not at Christmas yet. You're like 6 weeks away, and you walk into Coles or Woolworths, and they have like Woolworths radio or Coles radio, and I don't mind carols, but I swear they choose the worst carols. And one time I was going through, I think it was Coles or Woolies, but I was going through, had to get something out of the aisle that had the confectionery in it too, and I had my children there, and they're playing these carols, and maybe having to walk that aisle endlessly looking for the thing that you wanted to find would be fairly close to like a picture of hell, in that your kids just want everything they're not allowed to have. You're looking for the one thing you need out of that aisle that you can't find, and meanwhile, Coles radio is playing, telling your kids to stay inside their trolleys, and here's another repeat version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, like sung by tone-deaf 3-year-olds. So that gets me a...
The funny thing is, because in a lot of Australian retail, those sort of Christmas carol things are normally the ones that aren't super Christian in their lyrics.
Yeah.
Whereas a few times when I've been in Japan at Christmas time, a far less Christian country.
Yep.
But all the retail stores are playing carols that we would sing at church and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of funky though.
Go Japan. I think some of my favourite, Hark the Herald Angels Sing would make my all-time top Christian songs, for the lyrics in that, baby. But baby, baby Christmas version. The Justin Bieber's. Has he ever released a Christmas album? Justin Bieber's Christmas album feat Taylor Swift. I wonder if we could do that. So Jeremy, after we've done the Harvey Bay Baptist Youth heavy-ish Spotify version. We've done the Harvey Bay Baptist Youth heavy Spotify version, and maybe we could do a Harvey Bay Baptist Youth. If we were in hell, this is what they would play. playlist.
With the idea of Hillsong music and Justin Bieber music being like an attribute of hell, funny thing is Justin Bieber and Joel Houston are actually like buds.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard that. Taylor Swift Christmas album is pretty good. Oh,
Esther says
you
here,
should have put that on that playlist you made for me, Lucy. Then I would have listened to it countless times by now.
Esther says, when Jesus died on the cross, did he go to hell for 3 days before he rose again?
Good question. I was hoping that question would come up today because I feel like the two questions we've answered about Jesus wanting to sin and is God in hell really promotes that question. So
Yeah.
where did Jesus go when he died? Did he go to hell? And again, I'm with not like much left. I'm not going to delve into that one or whatever, but I reckon we put that one in Jeremy's questions on the to be discussed further.
We've got two interesting points we've got here. Georgie said that her understanding is that he went to be with his father, but then also said that she'll leave it to you to take this one. Whereas, was it Matthew pointed out that when he was speaking to the thief on the cross, he said, today you will be, did he say you'll be with me in paradise?
Yep.
Yes, so...
Yep. Yeah, and that's the two things that come to my mind to answer that question properly is that Jesus does say, today will you be with me in paradise. But then also when Mary greets him at the tomb, when Jesus has risen from the grave, he's out of the tomb, he says to Mary, don't touch me yet, Mary, for I'm yet to go to my Father. So, yeah. I could tell you what my brain thinks is the answer right now, but like my thought research for these questions, which is why these questions are so good and we love you guys asking them and hope that you guys are wrestling with them as we do, that there's often more to it. And sometimes the ideas that we have or the preconceived thoughts we have are not always as good as we maybe think they are. And that's why it's cool to wrestle with the Bible. Stream Christmas Tree Farm. Cool. Yeah, good thought. People, Hell's playlist. You should I'm actually gonna after this. I'm gonna get on Spotify and just like search for Hell's playlist or whatever and see just what comes up. Be very thing. I don't know if this has anything to do with our discussions of hell, but Gracie is doing a ballet routine. If we were to film that, then we would, of me doing that, I think that would also make the, maybe one of the video clips to one of Taylor Swift's Hell songs, Dan doing ballet to Baby by Justin Bieber or something like that. Cool. So yeah, got to follow up the question for Esther, follow up the question for Jeremy a little bit. We might give you guys some insight into that next week. Next week, it's Paul and myself again. I know that I'm wrestling with the question there about why does God let bad things happen? Pretty good follow-on from discussions about sin and hell. Why does God let bad things happen? And I must admit, I haven't actually looked at what question Paul's wrestling with. Paul, feel free to message us, bro. What question are you wrestling with next week? Yeah, let us know. So, cool. I hope you guys stay well. Enjoy wrestling with these thoughts. God's omnipresence, thoughts of hell, thoughts of Jesus, his impeccability. What are you smirking at, Mr. Thomas? Matt. Maybe it's a good thing that Matt's on YouTube and I can't see it when I'm doing this because it saves me the distraction. But thank you, Matt, for your contributions, whatever they may be at this time on YouTube. And Esther and Josh and whoever else has tuned into YouTube today. It's been good to have you guys along. I might close off here. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. It's a beautiful day. Get out there. Be COVID safe.